We are live on Facebook. Want to thank you once again for joining us for this conversation. As a reminder, please put yourself on mute. In addition, please have your screen off so that we can properly record and share this important conversation after we are done. At this time, I will transfer the microphone to Ms. Andrea Custis, President and CEO of the Urban League of Philadelphia.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone. First of all, let me thank this esteemed panelists for all of the work that you have done. I commend you on getting folks registered to vote, educating folks, mobilizing people, and making sure that people understand the importance of voting. I saw many of you on weekends and during the week. I saw Commissioner Sabir, especially, always Senator Hughes there, Barbara Arnwine, and so many more. So again, thank you for all the work that you did, and job well done. We accomplished, I think, some great things here in the city of Philadelphia. We had resounding numbers of people that showed up, showed out, and voted. I have the pleasure of introducing Commissioner Sabir, who was elected on November 5th, a very special day for him that he will remember. He was sworn in as the City Commissioner of the City of Philadelphia on January the 6th. He continues to remind us of the importance of voting, despite voter suppression, voter apathy, any of those challenges that we have experienced. He's committed to empowering all Philadelphians to participate in the process of voting and to understand the importance of civic engagement. With that, let me now turn it over to Commissioner Omar Sabir.
Oh, wait a minute, there we go. Hello, how's everybody doing? I like to say Happy New Year. I like to say thank you, Urban League, Miss Andrea Custis, we know we just did the sound test, and I said it before, when you did that introduction, I'm looking around like, who's you talking about? You did such a great, you speak so well, and it's an honor to actually have you introduce me. It's a pleasure to be partnering up with you. And as you know, we're out in the street communicating with the people. I also like to thank my staff. I'd like to thank them for, dealing with me. We get around events. It's always something, right? Senator Hughes, I was a staffer for 6 years. We're doing events. We want to make sure everything is right. I'd like to thank you all for doing this. Before we begin, I'd like to say happy birthday to my youngest daughter. She's turning 1 today. I'd like to say happy birthday. She's turning 1. She's the youngest of my 6 children. I'd like to say a happy birthday. And as I constantly being asked all the time about why are you out here? Why are you so excited about, trying to get people to vote, voting rights, people making sure that people have their voice. I do it for my children. I do it for, their children, God willing, if they have any. We want to establish their voice so that they can be heard. And their future depends on what we do at the voting booth today. So now is our time, and our time is now to not get lazy, to not take things for granted. There are a significant number of our voters who only vote during the presidential elections. So if you poll and if you ask a few people, ask them when the next election is, they're going to say, oh, next couple of years, 4 years, so we have to break that stigma. We have to get the education out there. Now we have to have the enthusiasm out there. Now we have to continuously talk to people and let people know how important it is for us to vote. Now is the time, and our time is now. So I see, I see Chairwoman Lisa Dilly is a speaker too. Okay, we got my Chairwoman on here. Hey, what's up, Chairwoman? We constantly talk about the things that I'm doing, but it's a teamwork. It's a teamwork. I have good colleagues that showed me the ropes. As a younger person, sometimes, you're running in saying you want to come up with all these different changes. You want to do this, you want to do that, but Commissioner Dillon and Commissioner Schmidt, they say, hey, young boy, slow down. you know, I know what you want to do, but, you know, think about it. And they always like, you know, push me through, you know, and I know when I get my calls from Commissioner Daly, you know, but the only time I'm really in trouble is when Commissioner Smith calls. I'll be like, oh man, what did I do? And he, you know, he calls, he says, hey, you know, let's look at it. I know what you want to do, but let's just think about it this way. And it's teamwork, you know, our emotions, you know, we vote on them. We all have ideas, but we all bring them to the table. And it's a collaborative effort. And, you know, it's a good reason why we have, you know, independent elected officials to run elections. You know, if the proof of this election is not, you know, evident of the reason why we should have independent election people running elections. It's for the people, you know, it's for the citizens. So we're going to get started. I have all these guests, but real quick, Chairwoman, I see you on here, you're a speaker. You want to say hi to everybody real quick? I was always told to take care of home first. You want to say hi to everybody real quick, Chairwoman?
Well, I'll be real quick. I just want to say hi. I want to say a little late, happy first anniversary to my colleague, Commissioner Sabir, who's completed his first year as commissioner. And wow, what a first year it was. I don't think many people, myself included, and anybody else on this call has been involved in elections as long as we have, ever imagined an election like we saw, really not only in November, but as well in June. So you really got your every lesson. I don't imagine that there will be a time going forward where you will be surprised by anything in elections. So it was a great first year. It's great to have somebody here that's working with us towards our collective goals, which is to make sure that everybody in Philadelphia is part of the process freely and fairly. So I welcome, I'm happy to be here. It's a privilege and an honor. And thanks.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Okay, so I'm going to remix. I got my little schedule, but I learned this from Senator Vincent Hughes. I get to do the remixing. So I'm going to call on State Senator Vincent Hughes, and I'm also going to call on State Representative Donna Bullock to speak now. When we're talking about the different changes with elections, you know, the state is very important and very crucial. And we have two public servants who's up in Harrisburg that's fighting for us. They're on appropriations, among the other things that they're doing. You know, they're the bosses with the hot sauce. We're going to need some more resources, you know, to make our elections work better, more efficient. If you look at Denver, Colorado, they have 400,000 voters, and their budget is $10 million. We have over 1 million voters, and we have a $10 million budget. So something has to change. And again, we'll figure it out, I'm sure. But again, I'm going to call on State Senator Vincent Hughes and State Representative Donna Bullock to say a few words in regards to what kind of changes we might can look for, see what we can get up inside Harrisburg for elections.
Thanks, Commissioner Sabir. And for everybody who hasn't figured it out, Commissioner Sabir has, yes, worked for me and clearly learned, because he's always asked for the money first, okay? He always asked for the money first, all right? So thank you for having this. I'm gonna be a gentleman, like my dad and my mom raised me. I'm gonna turn it over and allow Representative Donna Bullock, who is our new chair of the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, and a proud, very strong, very smart attorney, Barbara Arnwine, all right, to begin the process, and then I'll fill in after our chair is completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Thank you, Commissioner Daly and Commissioner Sabir, for hosting today's event along with the Urban League. This event couldn't be more timely. Last year, or probably, I guess now 2 years ago, Senator Hughes and I were in Harrisburg debating a bill about elections here in Pennsylvania, looking at some of the components of that bill, which included eliminating straight party ticket voting, but also included mail-in ballots and expanding the process and access to mail-in ballots. Now, we could not tell the future. We didn't know that when we expanded access to mail-in ballots, having no excuse mail-in ballots, that we would be in a pandemic just a few months later. But because of that those changes in Act 77, we've been able to expand voting to voters all across the Commonwealth. And particularly during a pandemic, that particular voting tool had been used by many, many of our residents. Now, those who were concerned about certain populations being able to vote, and I'm chair of the Black Caucus, so I'll be more blunt with that. Those who were concerned about Black and Brown communities voting began to take notice of the high numbers of voters in cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and across the state, and saying, well, wait a minute, all of these mail-in ballots are coming in from communities with populations that may not agree with our agenda. So they began to challenge that very early on, challenge a bill that they championed just a year ago. And I mention this as a backdrop as we move forward, is that we know historically when disenfranchised populations gain the access to voting, gain access to the ballot box, there are attempts to suppress that vote. It started with the grandfather clause years ago. If your grandfather couldn't vote, you couldn't vote. Then we had literacy tests, land ownership requirements, and so on and so forth. What we have seen this year are just modern day approaches to voter suppression. Senator Hughes and I are committed to working with our colleagues to ensure that we provide the resources and the tools to not just support our commissioners, but to continue to expand access to voting. Many of our colleagues have bills where we want early registration. We've already had that passed with this bill, but can we expand that even more? Can folks register to vote in other ways? Can we allow same-day registration and other tools and resources so that folks can have their voices heard at the polls? And that is important. And so I want to thank the Commissioner Sabir and Commissioner Dilly, who I believe is still on the call, and everyone else for your efforts on the ground. I saw young people this year getting folks registered to vote, and a lot of other community organizations and advocacy groups getting out there, registering folks, helping people apply for mail-in ballots, and ensuring that people came to the ballot box. Now, what was so inspiring to see is when we had our drop-off centers and we saw the celebration of voting. I mean, some of these drop-off centers, Commissioner, was a whole party, but we were celebrating this act of voting. And I hope that that celebration will encourage others to continue to vote, not just in big presidential years, but every single time. And I know you're committed to that, Commissioner, and I am here as a partner to hopefully bring folks back to the ballot box every single time there's election, every single year. And I know that Vincent Hughes, our senator and chairman of the Appropriations Committee, is going to make sure you have some money to do the education and outreach to make that happen. We understand that it takes resources to encourage voters to come out. It takes resources to make sure that that process is seamless and doesn't have any of the barriers and obstacles that may keep people away from the polls. So thank you again for this invitation to be here today. Look forward to working with you. Senator?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody, Urban League, commissioners, all of our participants. I can't go any further without saying Happy Founders Day to my sisters in the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. My wife would not let me. Okay, Andrea, now you get back on the screen. Okay. Marvetta's on. Yeah, Marvetta, all of y'all. All right, so Happy Founders Day. My wife said, called me first thing this morning. You better wish everybody Happy Founders Day. So Happy Founders Day to all of y'all. And thank you so much for your engagement and representing, being such a significant representative in the Divine Nine and in the march to political empowerment. I can't escape the moment. I don't think we should escape the moment of the irony of having this conversation at this moment. Because while we are having this conversation, the members of the United States Congress are voting to impeach Donald Trump for his leadership in an organized effort of insurrection that made itself visible, and I'm using my words very carefully, but I hope you hear them, that made itself visible and apparent 1 week ago today. I would ask folks to think of where they were a week ago at this moment, at this very moment. And he is being impeached in a bipartisan fashion because of the issue, Barbara, of voter suppression. I want you to think of that. And in fact, voter suppression in its highest form. One person wins the election, the other groups, one person wins the election, has the election certified. The group that lost the election wants to overturn those results, which is voter suppression. It is so ironic that we're having this conversation at this very moment while that act is going on. And that needs to sink in with everybody, because we have been dealing with this issue of voter engagement, voter participation, and voter suppression ever since we were forcibly brought to these shores. And we will continue to deal with this, and that is the pursuit of the more perfect union. Thank you to our 3 city commissioners and all of the nameless, faceless people who did the hard work of making sure that everything was done according, as my mother would say, according to Hoyle. For Donna, Bullock, and all you young people, nobody knows what that means, but there's a few of us on this call who understands that phrase, all right? That things were done correctly, things were done right. There was a trail, there was accountability, and there was a bias for democracy. And so votes got counted. And the reason why that's important is because in this highest form of voter suppression that materialized, that made itself visible last Wednesday, if not for Pennsylvania and the commissioners and all the folks who were part of executing that democracy in Pennsylvania so clearly and in such a great fashion, we would have little to stand on. We could not countervail their arguments. So I can't thank you enough. And this issue of continuing to pursue democracy as we go forward in 2021 is relevant because of the past and what we're dealing with right now, and what we learned worked, okay? Communicate the importance of voting, and people will vote, okay? Communicate the importance of voting in a language and in concepts and context that they understand and relate to, and people will vote. And know that the elections in Pennsylvania, the elections that are on the ballot in 2021 have a direct relationship. Quick example, in 2021, the top of the ticket will be to fill an open seat on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Why is that important? Because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was the final arbiter on all of the election challenges in Pennsylvania in 2020. Even the federal court had to defer to the Pennsylvania courts and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. There's one position open there, two positions open at the Superior Court level, and two positions open at the Commonwealth Court level. Commonwealth Court is important because the first place that you go for an election challenge, a challenge in voting, is in Commonwealth Court. So these positions have direct relevancy to our reality and have direct relevancy to what it is that we just went through. Needless to say, the position of district attorney is going to be up for a vote. I don't need to tell anybody how important that is for our day-to-day reality, okay? The position for controller is up for a vote. That's important for counting the money for the city of Philadelphia, making sure everything is running right. And the local judicial offices and other offices across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in the counties and the boroughs and the townships that are all on the ballot. I think it has been made clear in 2020 why all of this stuff is important. And I think it has also been made clear of what we have to do to make sure that we keep this level of voter participation high, which is having conversations like this early in the process so that people understand and can make sure that they're engaged. With respect to the changes in the laws in Harrisburg, the Democrats will have some proposals, will have some ideas. We'd like to be able to count the pre-canvass much earlier, and I'm sure I will get no opposition from my city commissioners with that one, okay? We'd like to begin that count earlier. We'd like to make it easier for folks to register. We'd like to make it easier for folks to handle just the processes, okay? And we'd like to make it easier and make it a state or local function, this is an appropriations issue, of standing up these early voting centers, okay? So that it didn't have to be compensated for by a private foundation, which is how they were paid for in 2020, for the most part. So, you know, and of course, our Republican counterparts want to be consistent with what it is that how they've been playing themselves out in the post-election cycle and the counting of the votes and the suppression of the votes. And it seems like the early indications they want to continue to push those matters in the legislative process. I can't thank the Urban League, the commissioners, all the supporting organizations, of course, my chair, Representative Donna Bullock, Chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, for us just gathering at this time to have this conversation. This needs to be a continued dialogue, not just a one and done. We need to talk about this regularly. And clearly, again, don't lose sight of the fundamental reason why there is such a brouhaha going on in Washington, D.C. right now. It's about voting. It simply is about voting. And that should tell us a whole lot about how important this democracy is and why we have to fight for it. The fact that people would attempt an organized insurrection that played itself out in multiple states all over the nation, that clearly had inside operatives, clearly all to suppress the vote. Tells you how important it really is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. You always did a great job. I'd like to thank our chairwoman, Donna Bullock. Definitely looking forward to working across the state with you as well. But again, you know, when we're talking about Election Day for 2021, we need to talk about that date. Okay, that date is May the 18th. That's the day, Tuesday, May the 18th, 2021. That's Election Day. That's election day. We have to keep on pushing that date. We have to say it over and over and over again so people can understand. And right now, you know, people can make a plan. And that's what we ask you to do. Whether or not you want to vote by mail, whether or not you want to vote in person. You know, we have all these different dates. Another date that we want to look at is February the 16th, because that's when nomination petitions begin. And you only have until March the 9th. That's when petitions end. It's a very short time. So again, if you have someone that wants to become a district attorney, there's someone that wants to become the city controller, there's someone who wants to be on Superior Court, Commonwealth Court, Supreme Court, they want to be a judge on municipal court, or the Commonwealth, tongue tied, municipal court, and the Court of Common Pleas. So again, you know, now is the time that we have to get everybody out. Now is the time to mobilize. We don't have that much time. February the 16th is upon us. People are going to have to get nominating signatures in order to get on the ballot, and that's a short time, which March the 9th. So again, you know, that's very important. And also, May the 3rd, that's a very important date. Why? Because that's the voter registration deadline. So if you want to participate in the upcoming election, you have to be registered by May the 3rd. And some people are walking around saying, hey, I'm already registered. Yeah, you may be already registered, but if you're registered independent, you cannot participate in the closed primary. So May the 3rd is an important date. So that's the deadline that you have to have in order for you to change your voter registration over to either a Democratic Party or either a Republican Party. So again, so it's very important of these dates. And again, the election day is on May the 18th. And then on May the 11th, that's the deadline for you to apply for your vote by mail ballot. It's very important. May the 11th is a very important date as well, because that's when we have to have all the applications by 5 p.m. So it's very important. So again, listen, guys, we have to get these dates out there so that people can become familiar with the process. Our constituents have told us over and over again, we only hear from elected officials about elections during election time. So we want to keep the conversation going all year long. So right now, we're talking about our vote. Now we're talking about protecting your vote. How do you protect your vote? So there's a couple names that I want people to be familiarized. We have an international voting rights advocate. I'm gonna bring her on. This sister is Donna. I was, working for Senator Hughes. I'm like, hey man, I'm gonna come to this event. You can't come. I was at Drexel when I first met this sister, and this sister just completely and totally blew my mind away in regards with voting rights and how people can suppress your votes. So I guess I'm gonna give you a discussion question. It's given the recent current events that happened in Washington, D.C., why is it important for people to vote? And I'm going to call on Barbara Arnwine, the president of the founder of Transformative Justice Coalition, to come on up and just share her thoughts, some of her experience. But, the discussion question is, right here and right now, given what just happened, why is it important right now for people to vote?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Commissioner Sabir, for having me on your program and for your great work. There's a whole debt of gratitude that's owed nationwide to every elected election official like yourself who are counting votes and had all those crazies making threats against your family, your heart, your lives. That was horrible. We have to have a national day of celebration for all of you in the future. We can't just leave this to the crazies, and that can't be the narrative out of this election. The narrative has to be the bravery, not only of people like yourself, but the narrative has to also be the creativity of all that outreach that was done by our one and only. I know you guys claim him for Philadelphia, you claim him for Pennsylvania, we claim him for the nation, and that is the mighty Senator Hughes. We love you, Vincent Hughes. You are amazing. And I just want people to know that around the country, we wouldn't be having this cataclysm. We wouldn't even be talking about hordes of insurrectionists if it weren't for Black voters. Let's talk about Black voters nationwide. I mean, the president, you saw he was, every time he was hating on what? Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit. He was hating Atlanta, anywhere where there are a lot of Black voters. That's where all his hate was directed towards. And that was no accident. But at the same time, I want to say to everybody that voters of color, especially young Black voters, set historic records in voting and turnout. And I know that people love to, try to deconflate, the motivation for those young voters because of their anger about Breonna Taylor, about George Floyd, about, policing going amok in this country. I know people don't want to talk about it, but that's what drove them to the polls. Let's be honest. I've talked to all these, I've been out there talking and dealing with young voters. And in Georgia, think about this, 33% of the vote statewide for the presidential election were young voters. Young voters. That's unheard of. And when I talked to them and asked them why, they said Ahmaud Arbery, they said Rayshard Brooks, they were quite clear. But what I want people to also appreciate is that with all of this energy, if we all hadn't done creative, unprecedented voter outreach, I mean, think about it. Philadelphia, Georgia, all these areas have what you call what? Internet deserts. Whole communities that have no access to the internet. I saw it all over Georgia because in fact, we had areas with no phone access when we were driving up and down those roads. And I want people to understand that meant that we had to use a whole different set of skills and creative inventions. Meaning, I was so proud of Philadelphia when you did your first votercade, and thank you, Commissioner Sabir, for receiving that votercade, and thank you, Senator Hughes, for not only doing that one, but what you did, 6 more? You went votercade crazy, but people loved it because it created that whole spirit of celebration of voting. And let me tell you, one other thing I've noticed about it is that it's also creating a culture of voting. Because I loved it when the young people were saying, Miss Arnwine, can I have that button? When they saw us and would stop us in the street as we wore our various vote masks. I mean, people were going crazy. The voter education was constant. And I just want to really, really, really say, this was the work of thousands. But also what I really love when I, talked about the button was that it has the image of who? John Lewis on it. And John Lewis and all of those who fought for voting rights. I loved how community after community lifted up their local heroes and talked about it. But one thing we also did this year that I think is imperative is that, our response, there's one response to all these nutcases that were out at the Capitol who are threatening to come out again and do damage, and they will. I have no doubt about it. I have no question about their capacity for destruction. But there's one thing they can't destroy. There's one thing they can't destroy. That's our spirit and our commitment to justice. We voted for justice. We voted for change. We're not about to give that up, not when we have all of the injustices that exist in this society. The one thing Philadelphia taught me, and I wrote about it, I keep putting it in everything that I wrote, is that when I saw what was going on in Philadelphia, the early, with the voting, the incredible turnout, the incredible voter registration, all of that, I wrote, we are unstoppable. Throw it at us, all your voter suppression. Go to our voting rights site, votingrightsalliance.org, and you'll see the 61 forms of voter suppression. Well, they come up with so many new ones, that's outdated. I gotta, go in and revise that and come up with the rest of the mess they've created in just this year alone. But one thing, from, Fannie Lou Hamer, to John Lewis, to Amelia Boynton, to Satima Clark, Rosa Parks, to, Dr. Martin Luther King, all of those, so many people, and John Lewis, and, C.T. Vivian, Joseph Lowry, all of them, they paved the way. And we know how to walk because they showed us how to walk. And our creativity is what's needed in this moment. And it doesn't matter. They can come at us all they want to, Senator, and they will. Our battle over the next couple of months will be against the onslaught, the attack on voting rights. And that's going to be happening in every state legislature. So we got a major battle to wage. The census, all this redistricting, there's going to be all kinds of battles to wage. But the one thing they can't overestimate, they can't miss, is that we're unstoppable. We're not about to give up this fight. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We definitely appreciate you, and we looking forward to working with you in the future.
Can't wait.
That's right, that's right. And also too, when you're in a fight, it's always good to know who the big guns are. So of course, Barbara Arnwine, she's a big gun. But we also have Sara Mullen. She's the director of advocacy from the ACLU. And we'd like to hear her thoughts on voter suppression and some of the issues, and you let everybody know, how to reach out to you and let them know if you have any problems.
Hi, this is really cruel to make me follow Barbara Arnwine because I'll be talking about all the nerdy things and the nuts and bolts. But first, I want to thank you so much for inviting me. Voting is a big passion of mine, and it's a very important issue that the ACLU works on. We have done a lot over the years to try to fight voter suppression, voter ID in Pennsylvania. We were one of a small group of nonprofits that challenged that. And unfortunately, we're seeing new legislation introduced once again to try to bring that back. So yeah, it's always a constant battle to try to stop these things. Things that worked really well in the last election, seeing those things in the legislature, trying to block drop boxes, et cetera, which I'm sure those who are in the legislature know far more about those than I do. So there is that fight. But I do think there's a lot of things that can be done behind the scenes to kind of try to make voting easier for people and improve the process that doesn't have to go through the legislature. And I think a lot of creative things were done by your office, election commissioners this past election. I really want to commend you on that, because that's the kind of thinking that we need in order to really move the dial on this. I don't think with our current legislature, unfortunately, we're going to be able to push forward any more voting reform. I think we're just going to have to stop it from being eroded. So I just want to mention a couple really nerdy things that are important though. One of them is is ballot tracking software. One of the biggest complaints we got from people who wanted to vote by mail, they were just so anxious about making sure their vote counted, and people are obviously in the middle of a pandemic and anxious anyway. And so ballot tracking software that people could just see where it is and through the whole process, I think would do a lot for making people feel better about this. I know these things are not necessarily free, and they need to we need to find funds. And that's another thing that I think we need to stress, is that these nuts and bolts aren't sexy things. I mean, Naked Ballot had a fun name and all, but generally the nuts and bolts of administration of elections is not sexy. And, we've seen election budgets cut to the bone, both at the state and local level. And we really have to, as a community, really push to make sure that those things are funded. We're not going to have well-run elections if we can't afford to do that. And our democracy is too important for us not to put the funding into that. So I don't want to take up any more time. I know you have a lot of great panelists, but thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you. And then real quick, do you want to give your contact information? Is that number still, is the 866 our vote number, is that still available?
Yes, that was actually a big thing. 45 groups at least are involved nationally and locally on this 866 our vote. It's a nonpartisan hotline for people to call with any kind of question around voting. Everything from where's my polling place to I'm at the polls and they're not letting me vote. What do I do? We found people, we go to court for some people that call that line if we need to. That happened this past election. So it's really a one-stop shop with a whole lot of public interest advocates there, lawyers ready to help people. I'll drop that in the chat too.
Good, yeah, thank you. And we're going to keep it. We're going to keep everything moving. We have the district attorney's office. They're partners as well. In some instances we do see irregularities, which it does happen. We do routine audits, all year long in regards to that. So sometimes we do see irregularities, and we refer them to our district attorney. And, I think it was maybe over the last 10 years, it may have been 20 instances, and I believe it's about 20 convictions or so, or something similar to that. But I'm going to call on Andrew Wellbrock. He's representing the district attorney's office, and he can speak just a little bit more to that, because, people keep saying fraud. Yes, in some small instances, it's more of a chance that you're going to get struck by lightning than to experience voter fraud. But in some instances, it does happen, and we refer them over to the district attorney's office, or either Josh Shapiro, or sometimes we may even have to go to the feds. But right now, we have Andrew Wellbrock. He's speaking right. We're going to call on him. He's from the district attorney's office. He's going to say a few words.
And good evening, everyone. Commissioner Sabir, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for everything you've done over the past few months. As a citizen of Philadelphia, it goes without saying how much we appreciate everything that you and the other commissioners did. My role is pretty straightforward. When there's an allegation of a violation of the Election Code of Pennsylvania, Title 25, it's our role as prosecutors to investigate it. We share that role, as Commissioner Sabir said, with some other entities. But we are the primary agency that you are going to reach if you encounter an issue on election day. A good portion of our calls on election day are usually people who are just confused. Where's my polling place? Did my ballot get in? As Sara said, the Sure system was a bit overloaded this year, so people were very uncomfortable as to whether their ballot came in. We had a lot of people who forgot that when they requested their mail-in ballots at the beginning of the pandemic, and selected to repeatedly get them, in perpetuity for future elections, they forgot they checked that box. So we had a handful of claims of fraud from people who just merely forgot that they'd already requested a mail-in. Of course, there's a solution for that. If you didn't receive your mail-in, you could vote provisionally. You could have gone to one of the satellite offices and corrected that. But that's mostly what we saw. Typical elections in Philadelphia, we see a lot of electioneering, people who don't realize they're standing a little too close to the doorway. It is rarely malicious. It is rarely an attempt to block. It is usually an issue of someone either not recognizing that they are within 10 feet, or they don't know where the door to the polling place is, so they're mistakenly staying that close. I don't think we've ever had a prosecution for that. What we've had prosecutions for is similar to what a lot of you might have seen out in 40 Fort, Pennsylvania, where a person voted for a relative when you were not allowed to do that. Like Commissioner Sabir said, it is more likely that you are going to get struck by lightning than that is going to happen. Even I think the largest purported voter fraud case in Philadelphia came out of the U.S. Attorney's Office within the last year or so. And with all of the investigative resources of the federal government involved, it accounted to about 20 votes in Philadelphia over the course of 2 or 3 election cycles. I am terrible at math, so please no one ask the question what percent that is. It is a very, very small number. So our role, we're here to make sure the community is comfortable. They know that there is an independent entity who is responsible for making sure that the law is followed, making sure that your right to vote is not abridged. I'm sure, Philadelphians were nervous, and, rightfully so, and I'm sure we all still are, about, outside forces, outside energies that might disrupt our free exercise of our right to vote in Philadelphia. It's, our duty as prosecutors and as law enforcement officials to make sure that we do everything we can to ensure that you as Philadelphians are protected, every single day, but additionally that your elected franchise is protected and that, we stand up for the right for a free and fair election for all, regardless of who you choose to vote for. So I'll leave it at that. If anyone has questions, I'm certainly available, but I know people want to hear from the other speakers as well. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. Can you put your contact information in the chat? That way we can, let everyone know, how to get in contact with the district attorney's office. And so we're going to call on the Barristers Association. We had Dominique Ward. Forgive me, my brother. You blame it on my brain, not my heart, but I don't have your name right in front of me. And I'm pretty sure you can introduce yourself. I know you have an engagement that you have to, take care of. I'd like to thank the Barristers for all your help. Just explain real quick about the Barristers real quick. And I know y'all have another event coming up real quick. Feel free to, let everybody know what's going on as well, because you guys are dedicated to justice. And I appreciate the Barristers for all the help that you guys have been doing for this election cycle and moving forward. So we're going to call on the Barristers Association to come on up and say a few words.
So greetings, my name is Reginald Streeter. I am an executive board member for the Barristers Association of Philadelphia. Before I get started, I would be remiss if I didn't wish the favorite sisters of Delta Sigma Theta. So we're going to incorporate a very happy Founders Day. But with that being said, so the Barristers Association, we're in our 70th year, and it's very interesting in our 70th year. This would be the year where there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into many ways in which that we serve. So typically we always try to find ways to serve our community in ways such as obviously legal advice and things like that, but actually putting our actual bodies and our time on the line. So this year, just kind of give you all a little bit of a flavor of what we did. We engaged in educating other attorneys and non-attorneys on topics such as election law, protection, advocacy. We also spent many hours volunteering on election day in a lot of ways, such as manning phones, going to the polls themselves, calling who we need to be called if something nefarious was going on, just being that backbone for our community. We really believe that we are not just from the community, but we are of the community. So our JDs have not jaded us in a way where we don't understand that we need to be on the ground. I think as a broader context, we believe as an organization that we need to break down all barriers of voting. And personally, the idea of having mail-in voting to me is a potential game changer. And maybe I think many of us can see why there is such a pushback to stop it, right? Any opportunity to limit vote clearly helps some individuals. And while we're a nonprofit organization, we're not going to definitely pick sides, but I think you all know what I'm saying. So with that being said, we look forward to continuing to fight for justice, put in work for our communities, and I think that's it, Brother Sabir. I will say this as well. I will say I'm very, very proud of you, Brother Sabir. I remember I was watching CNN and there was asking you all these questions, and I loved how you handled yourself, and then how you said, "Well, I got to go home because I have all my kids, to go see and things like that." So I really appreciate you for humanizing, being Black, especially being a Black man, and that we can walk and chew gum. We can be family men, but we can also handle something such as this.
Thank you, my brother. And don't y'all got an event coming up, man?
Yeah,
don't y'all got a breakfast something coming up?
Oh yeah. So thank you,
brother. Let's go, man. Talk about it, man.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Man, tell them to come on.
So right. So sad to say that this year we've had to move our MLK brunch to being virtual, but it's still going to be an amazing event. We've definitely put a lot of time and effort in it to at least make it not your run-of-the-mill typical virtual event. So there'll be some surprises and things like that. I'll definitely put the information into the chat. But if you want to their tickets are $25, and you can come and watch and enjoy with us. And obviously the proceeds are going to a great cause. We are a nonprofit. Which means funding is very important to do the work. And it'll be Monday. It'll be Monday starting at around 8 o'clock. So again, I'll put that information in the chat, and looking forward to seeing you all, at least virtually.
Thank you. And again, when we talk about the different changes that we have, I know we have a legislator that may not want to give us those changes, But again, that's why it's important, who we put in for Commonwealth Court, Superior Court, Supreme Court, Municipal Court, the Court of Common Pleas, because, we actually may have to sue, in order to establish, voting rights. When we got that change for the extra 3 days for us to receive the ballots, that change came from the Supreme Court. So again, we can get the changes that we need for our community as well. And of course, that's why it's so important. Election day is definitely May the 18th. Please, on your social media chats and on your feeds, I want you to start, inundating everyone that May the 18th is election day, and February the 16th is where that journey officially begins, because that's when the nominating petitions begin. And we just want to go over a couple more dates as well. Upcoming, we have January the 26th. So we're going to have a how to run for election seminar. And we're going to go to the soup to nuts about how to run for election. That's going to be on January the 26th. And on March the 11th, we're going to have the inmates and convicted individuals who can vote and how. Right now in Philadelphia and across the state and across the nation, we actually have people that are incarcerated, but they still have the right to vote. So again, that's one of our upcoming events. That's January the 26th, March the 11th. Again, so we're at 5 o'clock. I try to keep my events within an hour. I'd like to thank everyone again for coming out. That's State Senator Vincent Hughes. That's Donna Bullock. That's Barbara Arnwine. That's the Barristers Association. That's the Urban League. That's the ACLU and the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. I'd like to thank you. And again, you can always go to philadelphiavotes.com. That's our website where you can get all the latest information that you need in regards to your voting needs. Trusted messengers with trusted messaging. You can follow me, Commissioner Sabir, on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. So, you have any questions, please let us know. But again, you always can email us, our staff. We got Nakia Hurdle. We got Joe Driscoll. We got Ibn Muhammad. We got some dynamite people. And if you can't get us, guess what? You can get Chairwoman Lisa Dilly's office and staff, or you can get Commissioner Josh Smith. We want to be here for you, for all your voting needs. We want to start the conversation now. We don't want people to get lazy. We have some important stuff that's coming up on our ballot. Now is the time, and the time is now. We will not allow COVID-19 to stop our vote. Thank you. Happy New Year's. Peace. Have a good one, y'all. Thank you.